Yeah.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Stigma-Free Society Wellness Chats with Nisha. Great to have everyone join us today. We have a wonderful person I'll be interviewing today, Stephen Hall. He's from Together We Can. And just before I introduce Stephen, I just want to say thanks for being part of Stigma-Free Society, everyone, and coming every week and watching what we share. We really want to support families and parents and children and individuals and everyone who is just making it through this pandemic, and make sure that you know that you're not alone. And if you are experiencing things with mental health or addictions or things, there are people here to help you and people for support. And I have worked within the mental health field for many years, and I'm even surprised sometimes when I meet people on this show about, wow, you offer that. So make use of these resources. They're here to help, and they do great work. Also, I just want to let you know we have a disclaimer about if you're feeling overwhelmed and if things might be a bit too much for you, please just, close down the show and call 911. And first responders are always here to support you and your families. So I would, on that note, love to introduce an amazing support in our society. Welcome, Stephen Hall.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Nisha. I'm really happy to be here.
We're so happy to have you, Stephen. So Stephen is from Together We Can, and Together We Can was founded in '93. It's in Vancouver Island. It's a drug and alcohol recovery and education society. Mm-hmm. And it's one of Canada's premier treatment centers for men battling alcohol and drug addiction. So their mission is to educate and support men and families who desire a life in recovery. They provide over 310 men in an immersive 60 to 90-day recovery-based primary addiction treatment experience. And that's followed by transitional housing in a therapeutic residential environment. So very helpful to have that whole kind of package together. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to tell you a bit about Stephen. So Stephen is a community relations lead for Together We Can Drug and Alcohol Recovery and Education Society, TWC. And he's from the West Kootenays. He moved here in 2008 to attend a 12-step based residential treatment program at TWC. And after he completed this 60-day program, he began volunteering with this society as a support worker and then became a driver. And since then has become an in-house manager at the TWC Alliance program and works as part of the community relations and family support team. Mm-hmm. We're going to talk to Stephen about his own experience and how that gives him a fresh perspective, and how when he entered recovery, he was able to, receive the kind of support he needed. And let's just talk about, how this is, BC has a growing substance misuse epidemic and an overdose crisis. And so I think these are very important topics for us today. So why don't we start with Stephen? Tell us a bit about yourself. Yeah. And we'll just let you kind of introduce yourself a bit.
For sure. My name's Stephen Hall. Again, thanks for having me on the show. I'm really excited to get out there and tell us a bit of my story and talk about the overdose crisis and the resources and solutions that are out there. So a little bit about me. I grew up mainly in Alberta, and then I was in the West Kootenays for a few years, and then ended up coming out to Vancouver here to attend treatment with Together We Can. That was in July of 2018. I went through, like you had mentioned, a 60-day treatment program, and then ended up volunteering with the organization, and which led to full-time employment as a staff member with Together We Can now. Other than that, I guess I'm starting to really learn my hobbies. COVID actually kind of helped me in the sense that I found out I really like gardening. I bought a bicycle, so a lot of different things. Yeah. So it was, it has been nice, a little bit of a rocky road. The isolation is something that's, I think, difficult for a lot of people. So that's, I'm in a 12-step program. I'm a member of NA. Narcotics Anonymous, so that's kind of what I base most of my life around now as well, and just trying to give back to the community, those who are seeking recovery from addiction.
It's amazing. This is a real success story, And 2018, like this is very, like look at all, so much has happened even within 2 years. And I think that
Hmm.
that can give people who are watching some hope
Yeah.
that, like maybe you could tell us a bit about like, just to kind of put things in perspective, like here you are now working
Yeah.
with Together We Can and helping and giving back, but maybe like 3 years ago, what was your situation?
Sure. Well, I started actually like using hard drugs and drinking alcohol at the age of 13. So it was like right away. I wouldn't say I was physically addicted right away, but it became just such a norm in my life was to party every weekend, a weekend warrior, if you will. But by the age of 15, it was a daily thing. It was just what me and my group of friends did.
Yeah.
So after I had graduated high school, just barely, just made it, and sometimes I think they just wanted me out of the school. Uh, so that's when I really noticed, though I had moved back to Calgary and I was working. But that's if I look at my history, it was around the ages of 18, 19 years old is when my alcoholism, like my drinking, really took hold of my life, and it started to become a problem. I didn't recognize it then, unfortunately. I went off and on with drugs from the ages of 18 to 24. Sometimes I was doing a lot, sometimes I quit, but alcohol was a big, big thing in my life. At the age of 24, my family approached me, one of my sisters actually, and she told me, enough is enough. You need to get help. You need to go to a 12-step program, or you need to figure this out, or I don't want you in my life anymore. And that really, it played like a major core, like, impact. It had an impact on me, right? So I did start attending 12-step AA when I was 24 years old, but I didn't do it for me. I did it to appease my sister and my family, right? So I did get just under a year and a half clean and sober, and then relapsed in May of 2015. So from that relapse in May of 2015 till I ended up in treatment in July of 2018 was probably the hardest 3 years of my life. I was always employed. I had my bills paid and things like that, but that kept me in addiction all the longer, is because I felt I'm not that low level bottom person that's on Hastings, or can't afford their rent, or can't, I can pay my insurance, my phone's not getting cut off. So it really kept me in that mindset that everything was just okay.
Wow.
It was really the last year of that relapse that things started to fall apart drastically, and it was quick. I was a heavy cocaine user, was my main drug of choice. It started turning into me doing any drug I could get my hands on. I started to miss work. I was calling in sick all the time. I was drinking and using on the job. I was getting to a point where I couldn't pay my bills. I was living at my mom's house, and I have a younger brother and sister that were 12 and 13 at the time. And it came to a point again with my mother, and she said, I'm not watching you kill yourself anymore, so you're going to have to leave. And so I told them, I'll go to rehab. I'll go to treatment, right?
Yeah.
Again, I wasn't doing it for myself in the beginning. And so I used that actually as I appeased my family, saying, yeah, I'm going to treatment. And I did that for 4 months. And I kept telling them the alcohol and drug counselor just isn't calling me back. I was lying to them, but, I was giving them that hope. And so it was allowing me to stay in my addiction. And I remember the last run is what we call it, that I was on, was about a week-long binge. And I remember just sitting up in bed and just thinking, like, I don't want to do this anymore. Like, I don't know what it was, this awakening.
Yeah.
It was just like, I'm better than this. I can do better than this. And so I ended up calling Together We Can, and they had me in 4 days.
Wow. So you yourself were like, I want this to change now.
Yeah, I just couldn't handle it anymore. I couldn't, I couldn't look at myself in the mirror, in the eyes, Nisha, for years. And I don't know what changed. I can't pinpoint what changed for me and what made me actually see that I have some value in myself, that actually got me into the doors of Together We Can, and has kept me clean for this long. But I'm so grateful for it. I'm grateful for whatever it was that did that for me, right? So
I'm so grateful as well for you. Like, I'm just grateful for even society that now you are here and you're helping other people through this process.
Thank you.
And especially because you've lived it and And like you're saying, from age 13
Mm-hmm.
to now,
Yeah.
those are many years where you've experienced
Yeah.
a lot of pain.
Yeah, well, I was in basically active addiction. Even with that year, just under a year and a half, clean and sober, I wasn't following a program. I was just a dry drunk, is what they're called in the community. So I still had all the emotional problems. I still had the anxiety. I had the self-esteem issues. I wasn't doing anything to better myself. I was just staying dry off of alcohol and drugs.
Oh, what is it called? A dry drunk? That's
A
a very
dry drunk is what they'll refer to it as. Yeah. So, I mean, I could go into the 12-step program for hours, but real short is like the 12 steps is like a design for learning how to cope with your emotions, learning how to interact with other people. It's, if you really look at the 12 steps, it's like a CBT, DBT based therapy almost.
And for people who don't know what CBT, DBT is,
Mhm.
could you?
Yeah, so the cognitive behavioral therapy. So it's I don't know much about DBT. It's more action, but the CBT, we use it a lot at Together We Can as well, is more about learning how to change behaviors. And so looking at why do you act out in this behavior? What's the emotion behind it? What's the trigger behind it? And then learning, okay, so I'm triggered by the TV being too loud, and when that happens, it gets me in my head, and I'll go out and use. So we determine, okay, so what's happened in your life with the television? You know, we'll kind of look at that, whatever happened. And then when you realize you're being triggered by that, what's your next step? It's being more like aware of what's your next step. How are you going to deal with this trigger in a healthy way? And so that's the 12 steps. Is a lot of it is based on talking. It's just talking to your recovery support group, talking to your sponsor, making friends, being connected. And so that's a majority of the program, and that's what I live by today as well.
See, I think that's an amazing point that you're making, and for people to even, understand, or people that have experienced this to know if someone goes into treatment.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that people can sometimes go into treatment many times, right? Or
Yeah.
it can be effective. And
Yeah.
I've seen that too, that just because someone came out of treatment and it wasn't effective that time doesn't mean it can't be in the future.
Mm-hmm.
I know it's a big investment and it's hard on everyone around.
Mm-hmm.
Like what you're saying, like the CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, is very effective in helping you like pay attention to what are the thoughts that are the trigger,
Mm-hmm.
that you want to go do that thing that you maybe don't want to, but you just feel like I need to do that to stop this feeling.
Exactly.
And but it can work, right? So like, what is it, do you feel that was different, like you're saying, because you chose it this time, or something within you? Like how do people get to that point? Is it like when they say like it's got to be a rock bottom feeling, or what is
that? Yeah, it has to be a rock bottom feeling. It's I would say so much of it is everybody has a different bottom. You know, my bottom was, like I said, I had a house to live in and things like that. I was starting to lose my family, but a big part of my bottom was suicide, like the suicidal ideation. Like, I don't want to be on the earth, like the face of this earth anymore. So that was my bottom. It was an emotional bottom. Some other people have other bottoms where they're physically, on the streets or things like that. Some people have a very high bottom where they're just starting to deal with consequences, and they'll look at their addiction, right? But what it all comes down to is willingness. And so what we say in the treatment environment as well is like, it may not work the first time, but we're planting the seeds. And so if somebody comes into the program, they do their program and they leave and they relapse, a lot of the times they call us right away, and like they know where they need to go to get help, right? And so you do see some people that will come multiple times, but I will say it's very rare that most people get it on the first go.
Yeah.
It's you have, for me, for instance, I have 15 years of addiction and inability to like adjust to my environment that I have to work on. You know what I mean? That's not going to be fixed in 90 days. So this is a lifelong process, right? But we do see situations where like somebody's kind of forced to go into treatment. They're not ready yet, and it may not work, right? A lot of the times people who are forced into treatment, though, they will start to listen and they'll start to draw those similarities. They'll stop looking at the differences and say, okay, the group facilitator is saying this, and this is my story, or hearing somebody's story at an AA or NA meeting. And so you do see a lot of success with that as well.
What would you say to families who are like, we just need to get this person into treatment. We just, this is it. Like, we just need to get all our energy together and have, you know, some kind of intervention. And like the next step is just get them into treatment and then everything will be okay.
Yeah.
What do you say to families in that situation?
Well, part of my job as well is facilitating the family group that we offer. And so the piece of advice we give to family members when it's this situation is everybody needs to be a unified unit. You all need to be on the same page. Yes. Boundaries are so important.
Like someone can't let the person in when everyone else is saying no, like that kind of stuff.
Exactly, yeah. And so a lot of the times that's what will hold it back is one person in the family is allowing the addicted to come to their house whenever to shower and giving them money and things like that. And the rest of the family, it causes a lot of infighting. So everybody needs to be on the same page. They need to be unified and say he needs to get help, him or her.
It's very like enabling behavior. However, sometimes people don't know what else to do and they think that's helping.
It is, yeah. That's what they think, right? And so
they're afraid. They're afraid on the street.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's almost like a PTSD that the family has because of the impact of their loved one's addiction, right? Yeah. So that's what we say is the clear boundaries and like love. If love was the cure, we wouldn't need treatment centers, and you don't have to stop loving your son or your daughter or whoever it is that's in active addiction. You have to give them the opportunity to realize like what they're doing is not. It's just unacceptable, right? This is what I'm willing to do, and this is what I'm not willing to do,
right?
And sticking to that.
So kind of like these stronger boundaries of if you want to be part of in the family or come to our home, then what?
You have to be clean and sober. Okay. You have to be working on yourself. A lot of the times too, people will come home, they'll put down the pieces of the 12-step program or what we've taught them in treatment. And then they start getting irritable again. They start lashing out and things like that. So it's very important for families, again, because there's hope renewed. Your son or daughter come home from treatment after 90 days. They look good. You know, they have meat on their bones and their skin is clear and they're looking good. But then all of a sudden they start declining and it kind of, the families have to start walking on eggshells again. Around that person, and it's not fair for the family. So that's again where healthy boundaries and communication are extremely important. Like I feel scared because these are the same behaviors you exhibited before you went to treatment. And
there'll be denial, and they'll be like, "I'm fine," but you as a parent or as a family member can feel that and see that there's probably something there.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, our families know best, right? They watch us go through it, and so
they can tell something's different or something's up. And when you were referring to being a dry drunk, that's an interesting point as well, that even though someone might come back into your life and they might not be using, but if they're still lashing out and upset and things, it's that they also need to work on whatever it is that's within them that's pained and hurt.
Well, that's it, right? So there's the 12-step piece of the program, but that's not the only piece to the puzzle. You know, there's it's really highly suggested that people get alcohol and drug counselors or trauma therapists once they're in the program, because we can't ethically start unpacking somebody's years of trauma in a 90-day program and then say, go home now without that support, right? So we'll start scratching the surface and help them set up counseling. But you know, if your loved one is coming home from treatment, it's really highly suggested like that they have a counselor set up. They are attending 12-step meetings. They have a support group in the recovery community that they can talk to. You know, those are the three big things that people need.
I think that is a huge point. And for any families or people with addictions to know that, amazing, if you're making it through and you're doing the work and like getting clean, but also know it's, if you have that extra support of community, but also like a counselor, someone you can talk to, like you said, about that trauma that keeps you going back to whatever you're trying to mask, that is key as well.
It is, yeah.
It's so amazing. And so maybe you could tell us a bit about, you know, Together We Can is doing such amazing work. What's their like that vision and their mission?
So our vision and mission is to, help as many people as we can that are struggling in active addiction and require like a safe, sober environment for them to start unpacking the mental health struggles that they're experiencing, stay clean off of drugs and alcohol, and be exposed to the education. We do a lot of science-based approach, a wellness and holistic-based approach. Together We Can is very fortunate in the sense that we are a big organization. So we have 5 5 primary treatment programs that are all a little different.
Oh.
Like our Alliance program, for instance, is more of an LGBTQ based program. It's a safe environment for LGBTQ people to come to treatment. There's not a lot of options out there, especially for a transgender population. And then it's also more geared towards like a younger population, and it's more wellness and holistic. We have our All My Relations program that's Indigenous healing. And so it's all cultural based. You know, they still do the 12 steps, but it's mainly like getting reconnected. We have elders and knowledge keepers that come in, or they're doing it over Zoom now. We're holding sweats and pipe ceremonies and getting people back into the culture. You know, we have our PTSD programs for first responders and veterans. So there's a lot of different things that TWC can do to help. And so our main mission is like, addiction doesn't discriminate, nor should treatment. And so we want to make sure that we're available, easily accessed, and low barrier to whoever needs support when they need it.
Wow, that's so amazing. Because so many families could use that support.
Yeah.
And so what happens like when someone is, you know, feeling like they're ready? I want help now. I want to get into recovery, or family is saying, I want you to be into recovery.
For
right?
sure. Yeah.
What happens? What's the process?
So a lot of people, it depends on your situation. So if it's through your union or work, you'd call like your employee assistance program, and they would actually help facilitate that. Everybody though, it doesn't matter what your work is or anything like that, they can call our intake line. Our intake works 24 hours a day, our intake team. So you just call our main phone number, let them know like, I'm seeking treatment, or my loved one is seeking treatment, or I want my loved one to get into treatment, and we'll actually talk to the loved one as well and see about all.
That number, Stephen?
Yeah, it's 604-451-9854. And you just ask for the intake team. They do a little interview over the phone and figure out the best option for you.
Amazing. And then if people wanted to look it up online, they would just go to...
It's www.twcrecoverylife.org.
twcrecoverylife.org. So for those who are thinking about this or looking at this, like go online, take a look at the site, see like what the different program offerings are, because it could change your life. Like look at your life, Stephen.
Well, thank you. Yeah.
How has it changed since, like, you know, let's say even 3 years ago?
It's so different. Like, you know, I have, I'm in a committed relationship with somebody now. I have like, I'm comfortable in my home. My bills are all paid. You know, I live with roommates, but they're awesome. They're all in recovery too. I have a reliable car that I'm not scared. It's a silly fear, but I've always been scared that my tires are going to fall off for some reason, because I've always driven these old cars. But now, like, you know, I have a car that I'm not concerned about. But I think the coolest thing about recovery for me, anyways, over my last 2 years, is the group of friends that I have. I've never had friends like this before. I've had friends, you know, in the past, but like my support group, the people that I talk to, I can get so vulnerable with them. And just talk about my issues as they are. They help me sort out my thinking. The relationship I have with my family now is unparalleled. I caused a lot of damage in my family. I caused a lot of stress for my mother specifically. And I really realize that impact now. So by staying clean and showing them that it's possible, I get to relieve that burden. You know, that's the biggest thing, is my mom isn't laying awake all night wondering if I'm alive or not, right? And I didn't realize, unfortunately, when I was in active addiction, and most people they can't see the impact. They don't understand that their moms are laying in bed worrying about them. And, you know, my mom would try and talk to me and I'd get defensive and rude. And it wasn't what she was trying to say. It was because I was so upset with myself, you know. And
so it's easier to just block it all out.
Yeah.
Numb out.
Yeah, exactly. And it's about numbing, right? That's what drugs and alcohol do. They numb. And
so then you don't feel and you don't think about things from the past, or And so now tell us a bit about your role at Together We Can. What kind of work are you doing with them?
For sure. So like I mentioned, I started as a volunteer, which is really cool. TWC has over 60 full-time staff members, 95% of which are in recovery and have gone through our program. We have a few different people, but I think about 75% of us are actually alumni of TWC. So started as a volunteer driver, and then I was a house manager. So you actually live in one of the primary treatment programs, and you're like 24 hours a day. I did that for about 8 months and helped do support work and things like that, and just kind of manage the home. And now today I was brought on to the community relations team last October, and now I'm leading that team. So our team's responsible for all of our social media, our digital, like our websites, things like that. We also handle all of our events, like our upcoming TWC Gala that's on November the 18th. We're doing it all online.
That's a great way to support TWC. So it's an online gala.
Yeah. So it's coming up on November the 18th at 7 o'clock. Actually, tickets are available at twcgala.com. They're $25 a ticket. We're going to be having a documentary that TWC, our team, has produced and filmed. So it's going to cover the overdose crisis and then showing the hope in recovery. And then we have some great guest speakers like Don Davies and Adrian Dix from the NDP. Kevin Stevens is a two-time Stanley Cup champion. Pittsburgh Penguins. He battled with addiction as well and has cleaned up over the last 4 years and does a lot of work in the community for prevention. So we'll have musical performances from some of our alumni. It's going to be a really cool event. It's an hour and 15 minutes. So yeah, that's what our main role is. And then obviously we do our alumni programming, to keep people connected. We have our family group, which is free and open to the public. We do that through Zoom. And then
It sounds really helpful as well. So for maybe families who are at a loss, which I think definitely many families are when working with addiction and not sure what to do or what are the right steps to take or what are the right behaviors as a family. We're talking about enabling and things and it causes a lot of fighting within families.
It does. And that's why we've redeveloped our family programming. It's our family education group. It's four classes. It always starts on the first Wednesday of the month. So we have a new one starting on November 4th. But we cover like the science behind addiction, enabling, codependency, boundary building, communications, a whole bunch of different topics. It's free. It's open to the public. So anybody is welcome to join that. They just have to go onto our website at twcrecoverylife.org and look at family support, or they can call the main phone line as well and give me their email address and phone number, and I can get them set up too.
See, that's amazing. And I think that's a huge, like that education piece for families is huge. To understand like the language and the behaviors so that they can start to, because it's all part of like, everyone's part of it, right?
Yeah.
So if they can just start to see like what their role is or how to support, maybe little changes can start happening.
Well, that's a big thing. The biggest fear I've heard from family members that have been participants in our program is, I don't know how to talk to my loved one. They're terrified of saying the wrong thing and making And so one thing we teach is you can never make somebody pick up a drink or a drug. As long as you are good intentioned and your boundaries are being set firmly, then how that other person reacts isn't your fault.
Oh, that's great, because that's also a part of addiction, right? That the addict, because of the addiction, will maybe blame or shame someone, but it's also part of getting being able to continue the behaviors.
Well, I remember one day my mom said, "Stephen, I think you're an alcoholic." And I said, "I'll show you an alcoholic." And I went out drinking for 3 days. That was my big response to it. And I used it as an excuse to go out and party and say, "I'll show you," and
you made it happen now.
Yeah. And so it's like, it's a filter. It wasn't true at all. It was just my own. Yeah.
Yeah. And so what do you think were the most helpful factors in your recovery journey?
Again, I can't stress it enough, is like connection, is talking to people in recovery, build that support network. Don't worry about people judging you, because that holds us back a lot of the time. We're so scared of getting vulnerable as addicts. We don't trust in the process. You're not going to lose anything, right? A lot of people will say, try the program, try AA or NA for a year. And if you don't like it, then you can go back out. And a lot of the times, people try it for a year, they usually stick around because you can see the changes in your life rather quickly. I'm just over 2 years clean, and my life is like a 180-degree turnaround. So it's, I wouldn't trade this for anything.
I love hearing that. And then what guidance would you give to people who are facing addiction, who are going through it currently?
Know that you're not alone, and Yeah, just you're not alone. And it's possible. The one thing I tell our clients here at TWC is like, I really hope you start to learn the value in yourself because I can see it.
Mm.
When you're addicted and you're entrenched like that, you can't see your own personal values. So for those out there that may be struggling with substance misuse, is like pick up the phone, reach out because like you're worth so much more than a bottle or a drug. You're a human being and you deserve a good life.
And I think that's a really beautiful point that sometimes when people are in addiction, so many of the relationships around them have been hurt, right?
Mhm.
Destroyed,
Yeah.
frayed. And so the addict could end up feeling very alone.
Hmm.
And being alone is another like feeling of like down.
Yes. Yeah.
But they reached out to Together We Can.
Hmm.
That's a group that's going to understand these behaviors.
Yeah. Well, like I said, our staff, we're all in recovery, so it's like we've been there. We know exactly. I know what it's like to make that phone call to a
Yeah.
treatment center and tell them I need help. I've done it. I've done the intake. I've done the program. I've lived in the house. I've done it all, right? So who better than somebody who's done it to help guide you through it, right?
It's not like, so then they also know, like, I think a lot of addicts might be fearful of judgment,
Hmm.
of like, oh, you think like and whereas where Together We Can is coming from is we understand.
Exactly. Yeah, we totally understand. If you look at our addictions counselors, because we have an employee education program, our addictions counselors, again, are Together We Can alumni that we've helped them through school, and now they're CCAC counselors. So, again, your counselor is going to completely understand what it's like to be in addiction because they were there, So don't worry about being judged. Don't. It's that's in our head is that we're going to be judged when reaching out to an organization, but that's literally our mandate. That is our focus is to get people into treatment and to show you like there's hope out there. There's a better way to live.
It's amazing. And what I find, like, during the whole pandemic and people going into lockdown and shutting down, that, like you said, community is so important. And
Hmm.
now more than ever, it's hard to be with community. And also people
Hmm.
are more fearful of, COVID.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
maybe families that in the past might have said, like, come in
Hmm.
and come and shower and have some food, and might be more
Hmm.
reticent, might be like, you can't come in right now.
Well, you
And
can't guarantee where they've been, right? So that's perfectly understandable. And with with the isolation of COVID, it's had a real impact on people in recovery and those in active addiction. We're at an all-time high for people who are overdosing and dying.
yeah, it's such a huge problem right now. There is a
It's
huge overdose
massive.
crisis, and let's talk about that. Like, what?
Yeah. Well, in my own opinion, is right now it's hard to get a supply into the country with the borders being closed, a supply of drugs. And then we gave everybody $2,000 a month. And so what has happened is the supply is low, the demand is really high. People are buying amounts of drugs that they've never bought before on the streets. And so the drugs are being cut so much to keep up with the demand.
Yeah.
But that's where we're getting all this toxicity from. And
When you say they're being cut with like not like
yeah, with fentanyl, other types of drugs. The opiate supply as well has been mixed in with, so there's fentanyl as well as benzos, like benzodiazepines. The unfortunate reality with that one is Narcan kits actually don't work for benzo overdose. And so people are still dying with the Narcan kits, right? Or the naloxone kits. So some people, it's taking 7 or 8 naloxone hits to get them to wake up again. And a lot of it too, we've had people, our alumni and things like that. A lot of people are relapsing as well because they're not able to go to those in-person types of things. So again, there's like Zoom meetings out there. There's calling your friends. There's ways of staying connected. But yeah, with it, it's a lot of people just feel hopeless right now when it comes down to it. And even on the downtown east side, a lot of the shelters, for instance, went down to 1/3 of their capacity, which we don't have enough shelter beds as it is. And all of a sudden, we lose 2/3 of the capacity. So all of a sudden, on the media, we're seeing like Strathcona Park and things like that. These people were housed in the shelters and they have nowhere to go, and now it's become a problem. So it's been a problem for a very long time. It just hasn't been on doorsteps, right?
Yeah, we just haven't seen it firsthand, and so it's kind of like this whole lockdown is bringing it more in front of our eyes. And
Exactly.
as a community what can we do? How can we support people? How, and you can even start by, attending the gala and
Yes,
going to
exactly.
the website and learning about it and
Yeah.
seeing that, like you said, what was the quote? Addiction doesn't
Discriminate. Yeah, and neither should treatment, right? So like it's surprising you get the people who are on the streets up to well-established doctors who are in addiction. It doesn't discriminate. Addiction is addiction, and what it comes down to, again, talking about bottoms, is like, what is it doing to your life? How has your life become unmanageable because of it, right? So that's personal for everybody. Everybody has a different view on that.
So when we talk about, stigma-free society, we want to have conversations so that people do feel comfortable talking about these things. And in many communities, I think addiction can be something that we hide or don't talk about, and don't, these feelings of shame and but the thing is, it can affect anyone, and it doesn't matter the social status or the level. It's actually something that can take over your whole life.
It can. And, we do get instances where the family will have their child in treatment, and the family doesn't want their friends or other family to know that their son or daughter struggles with addiction issues and substance misuse. And it's really dangerous because you're keeping the addict in a guilt and shame, like that it's guilt. You should be shameful for your actions, and that doesn't help anybody to recover, right? It just enforces the stigma surrounding it, is that it's hopeless and people aren't worth it, right? So
what should families do then? What do you recommend?
For me personally, I recover loud. I was when I was drinking, I was the loudest person in the bar, so I can do that while I'm in recovery too. But I think recovering loud and talking to people about it, and families, rallying around their loved one. People love their loved one. Like, you love your son or daughter or sister or brother or whoever's out there in active addiction. You love them enough to get them into treatment. We have to keep loving them once they're out of treatment, and not letting them feel like they should be kept in the shadow, because if somebody's kept in the shadows or they're judged for it, they're most likely going to go back to their using, it's the unfortunate reality.
So bring them around, allow them to talk about their experience, how they're developing, where they're at.
Exactly.
And, maybe they're in treatment, maybe they're in recovery, whatever it is, to be open about it, to know then you have a community that you're surrounding yourself with that cares about you. And as a society then, what can people in society do? If someone comes and says, oh, I'm in recovery or I'm in treatment, what can be people's reactions?
I think it's congratulating them. And not asking well, what brought you there? And the fact finding those real selfish questions, because you just want to know, but just congratulating them. Yeah. And just saying, if you ever want to talk about it or, tell me about it, I would love to learn more. Open up that space, to talk about it. One of the most recent experiences for me is I was renting a house in March with a couple of my friends that were in recovery, and we had mentioned to the leasing agent that we were in recovery from drug and alcohol addiction, and actually kind of slowed the process down because she was concerned that we were going to party and wreck the house. And my thought was, what if I wasn't in recovery and I just drank a lot? I don't have to disclose that to you, nor would anybody else. So it's the same risk, but I found it real off-putting that I would have to, I would have to justify myself because I'm clean now. I'm 2 years clean, and now I'm telling you I won't drink, and I have to promise that to you, so.
And I want to be honest about it. And so if we can have more honest conversations, but also when someone comes to you like that, be open and accepting and supportive.
Yeah.
That can change the conversation.
A whole bunch, right? that support piece, for somebody to come out as well and tell you that they're in recovery, it kind of shows that they trust you. Yes. And so it's a great practice in trust, because like I said, I do recover loud, but I don't walk through metro town screaming I'm in recovery. But if I'm in conversation with certain people, I'll bring it up, if I'm comfortable. So if somebody does tell you hey, I'm in recovery or I struggle with addiction issues, it's because they trust you, and they want to share that with you, the positive. They want to share the positive with you.
And then even in society, I think sometimes people who are in recovery may feel pressure if you're at a social gathering to have a drink, because that's what everyone does. Oh, you can just have a drink. You're okay now. One drink or something.
Yeah, that's a big one, Nisha. Yeah. So don't, if somebody says I don't drink, they don't drink. It's just accept that for them and move along. I've been pressured too, where it's oh, come on, you're clean, or, it's like, why can't you have one? And people ask a lot of follow-up questions, because I think it's just the norm that everybody, you go out and have a few drinks.
Yeah.
But for me, a few drinks turns into like 10 days. And so, I know my limits, and respecting that, and not grilling me on questions. Because again, you don't want to be in the middle of a social gathering with a whole bunch of people and then say, well, I'm an alcoholic, and then everybody has questions, so yeah, it's it can be nerve-wracking for sure.
Yeah, I can imagine. So I just want to say thank you so much, Stephen. This has been really enlightening talk, and I think it's super important information for so many people and families and people experiencing addiction. And I just want people to know that there is a place for you to go. There is someone to talk to. There's a place to get started, and even for families to get information. Together we can. They're here to help. And, it's really meaningful. And so, Stephen, any last words before we depart?
Oh, I really thank you so much, Nisha, and the Stigma-Free Society. Really excited. We're going to be building a little bit of a partnership with the society as well, and doing some cross-promoting. So very excited to be working with you guys. And this has been a really great opportunity. So thank you for that. And I really hope the people listening today have got something that helps.
I'm sure they did. And thank you, Stephen. Thank you, Together We Can. Thank you to everyone watching. We'll see you next week, Thursday at 11. Much love to everyone, and take care and just live your best life. Okay, take care. Thanks. Bye, Stephen.
Thank you. Bye.